Welcome to Turn Extension, a supplemental podcast for the Advanced Maneuvers YouTube channel.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Turn Extension. My name is Tony, or Polar Bear Cub on the forums.
Hey everybody, it's Kevin Dowdark on the forums.
This is Devin, Cutthroat Cure on the forums.
So, and to start us out, we're going to hand it over to Devin. Devin, what do you got for us?
So I wanted to take the first little bit of the cast and give out a little bit of a responder spotlight for the people that went out of their way to kind of address some of the questions we asked episode 4. I first wanted to throw out a call out to Joshua Diaz and give him a like a thumbs up on his point about the Knights Exemplar. I didn't know they did all that, and between a Power 11 1-inch, Mat 7, Battle Driven, and their UA, they're ridiculous and should have made our list.
I definitely like that unit. I like the UA. I love the fact that they're now 1-inch because Jesus, look at their swords. But my only concern with that is the point value. Like the point value skyrockets when that UA gets attached.
And then I wanted to throw one out to Sean about the Thorn gun mages. The only reason we didn't discuss them in greater detail is because they're not officially released yet, and we haven't really gotten to see as much as they get to do. So it's been a little bit. We haven't really got to see too much. Also, he brought up Flamebringers from the Protectorate of Manoth. He calls them Daughters of Flame on murder ponies.
The Thorn gun mages we weren't allowed to talk about because Polar Bear Cub is upset that they don't have gun mages in Signar anymore.
Whatever. We do have them. They're just called Thorn gun mages now. Those things are sweet.
You used to have a monopoly on all the guns, and now it's just everywhere.
When Kane 3 comes out, hopefully it'll make gun mages great again.
Oh, you mean in Mercenaries? Yeah, he'll come out in Mercenaries.
He's going to be a partisan, goddammit.
Nope. Read your books. Read your lore, man. He's angry. He's angry gun mage.
He's actually not that angry.
And we're definitely going to table that for a partisan conversation in a later podcast. But and then I want to throw out a big shout out to Emily Lavender. I want to give her a thank you for bringing up the Steelheads and the Press Gangers. And I wanted to thank her for also sharing the new Errata with us, which is actually going to be the main topic of discussion today.
All right, so then let's get into it. The Errata dropped the previous Monday. So this is releasing 8 days after the Errata drop. So by the time we did our recording, we've had a couple days, to kind of talk about the Errata, let it sink in, talk with some other people. So let's get started. I'm going to start with, let's start with Karys Sloan's feat.
So there's been a lot of frustration on this one. A lot of people felt that it was a nerf. A lot of people felt that it was a buff. Like, it's such a weird scenario where you get a rules change on a Warcaster like this, and the opinions of the community just start waffling all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where I'm not sure if it's a buff or a nerf. I mean, it took away any potential at all of having a top of 1 assassination, which is good. Even a 1% chance, we have to take it as an absolute certainty, or whatever Batman said in the new Batman vs. Superman movie. So
horrible movie.
I just bought it, so I'm kind of excited to put it in because I've heard stop getting me distracted, damn it. All right. So it's nice because it's no longer the top turn 1 assassination. Also, with this new feat, it allows more positioning. I think with the old feat, you were more it was more strict on how you positioned everything because everything had to be lined up perfectly. Everything had to shoot, and then Karys Sloan had to activate, and she was the last one to activate in that sequence. And then she had to shoot, so it didn't give you a chance for her to activate, shoot, refuge back, and then allow everything else to move forward and keep attacking. she was the last one to shoot as opposed to now she's the first one to shoot. Good thing is now she casts Fire Group for free, which is great because it gives you an extra 2 inches of range. But is that necessarily something you need every single turn? Or is that something you're going to necessarily need on that turn? It might be, but that extra 2 inches is not something you might always cast. Because originally when it was spoiled, or when we were told back during the lock and load, it was not firing group, whatever the other one that gives you additional die. Now that would have been a significantly more powerful feat if it gave you, just because that spell was 3 focus, and if it would have given you 3 focus and an additional shot, it would have given you an additional shot. It would have allowed you to cast a 3 focus spell for free. That would have been 3 extra focus you could have used. So I don't necessarily think it's a buff or it's a nerf. It's kind of right in between and makes her not horrible.
There's actually a write-up done by Trevor the Great over on Way of the Swan. If you haven't ever gone to that place, I highly recommend going to wayoftheswan.com and reading the article about Sloan. He does a really good write-up explaining why this, for all the people who feel that it's just a massive buff to her and that it's tilting the game. He does a great write-up as to why it's not and how it draws a lot of parallels to Haley 1's Mark II feat where you got an extra shot, but it's only bound. This Sloan's is only bound by battle group. I'm not going to necessarily do the whole thing because I won't give it enough justice. But basically, if you haven't, go over to Way of the Swans and check it out and that's kind of, after reading his article, I immediately kind of went into this encampment of it's more of a linear change in her feat. Like it doesn't feel like it got better or worse. It's just a feat, and then they have fixed it in a way where it's not going to be this experience where somebody sits across the table from a Sloan player and before they ever get to pick up and move dice, they're dead.
I think in the basic point of it is that they made it a little bit more fair. Like Sloan did not get worse in any manner, but it's definitely going to fine tune it where your opponent at least has a little bit more choice, or a little bit, they have the ability to maybe survive it. I would love to see somebody take the Signar symbol and alter it into looking like Chicken Little, because it seems like any time a change happens in Signar, the sky is falling. And so I don't know. I haven't gotten to play Sloan in the new edition, so I can't say too much other than when I read. But I mean, when I read it, it doesn't seem as bad. But I mean, she's still good across the board.
She is, and I haven't put Sloan on the table yet because as soon as we heard that there might be a change to her feat, I didn't want to get used to playing the old feat just to see if this Errata dropped this new one. So with changing feat, I want to put her on the table at least a couple times, just kind of see what she does and see how strong she really is, because she does have a lot of benefits. The True Sight is a huge thing that I think it's really going to help with to be the ability to see through clouds for line of sight is pretty freaking powerful. Which actually, let's talk about True Sight. That was another change.
Yeah, they changed it up a little bit. There was some confusion that people were considering it to be like the Mark II version of the rule, where you ignored all cloud effects. And they fine-tuned it to say that you ignore cloud effects when determining line of sight, and also you get to ignore stealth. So, I mean, some people that kind of hit a little bit hard. You got your Grims, who, ignoring concealment's a good thing, but it's not horrible. It just definitely changes how some of the old models might play.
Yeah, and it was nice too, because the way how it was worded, I mean, technically they would ignore all cloud effects. So no cloud effects at all would, even if they walked into it, like the cloud effects that would do -2. The way how it was written in the beginning of Mark III was they would ignore those as well. or that's how you can interpret the rules. So it's nice that that was changed.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of these that show up in the errata where they're clarifications. Like this errata wasn't jam-packed with meta changing changes in the errata. It's a lot of it's just word clarifications and stuff like that. And I think that though this is a change to the way people were dealing with things, it's not necessarily one that I think is going to shift the game in any way.
Yep. All right. So next one, actually, I'm going to bring up, and I know we didn't talk about this in our small little group discussion, is Tactician. Did you guys see that they changed Tactician, and do you know what they changed in it? 'Cause I do.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I saw that they changed it, but it didn't look too much different than what it was.
So, Tactician before read, while in a model's command range, friendly Storm Knight models ignore other friendly... Well, sorry, this is on the Stormblade Captain. Would ignore other friendly models when determining line of sight. And the change, they said that they can ignore. So, pretty much beforehand, Storm Knights, let's use that as an example, when Tactician was there, you technically could never draw a line of sight to another Storm Knight in that unit. So, like, Maddox technically couldn't draw a line of sight to any Storm Knight, so before this errata change, she couldn't put any spells on them because she always had to ignore them for line of sight purposes. So now with the you can ignore, means that you don't, you can choose to ignore them or not ignore them. But beforehand, you had to ignore them.
That's a huge difference.
It is. It is a huge difference. And that's literally just they forgot to put the word can in.
Which, it's amazing how just simply one single word changes a rule from something completely different into something, Speaking of something that used to have Tactician, but it no longer does, but it does help out, is the Fenblade Kithgar. They changed how his veteran leader, and I think they also did this on the Tormentor and Scorn. It's now it says while in this model's command range, other friendly Fenblade models gain +1. So now Fenblade Kithkars can affect other Fenblade Kithkars, and I'm pretty sure in Scorn, the Scorn guy can affect, I'm trying to remember which one that is. It was who was that? Trying to remember. I don't know, but it's just a little bit better now. So it just makes sure that everybody, including the UA and everybody, can be affected by his rule instead of just specific things.
I'm starting to wonder if we look at cards and we start seeing little archetypes on their cards. They'll have little additional identifiers above and beyond Warcaster, Solo, and stuff like that, or their faction, where you've got stuff like Privateer on the Privateers, or Trollkin and stuff like that, Northkin and stuff like that. If this isn't just going to be a sign where Privateer Press is trying to make sure that these archetypes or these subtypes are across the board, so that a way they know anytime that they use a rule in like their theme forces or something like that, that there's no question whatsoever. Like if the word Fenblade shows up, it applies to anything that has Fenblade in their type card.
And I agree with you completely on that. I think that they're trying to fine-tune it to make sure that these units that work in cohesion with each other are working completely in that manner and not leaving any part out, So, good on Privateer Press for that. I am definitely very happy with that. But going into the trolls a little bit deeper, one thing that I am not happy with is the change to Doomy 1. He, on his weapon, he had a curse which said that anything hit with that weapon lost all focus and or fury off the model. And they finer detailed that into saying enemy models. So the whole having Doomy walk up behind Mulg or Mauler and hitting them and removing all of their fury is now a thing of the past.
So I think I would have been okay with them being able to keep that ability if they would have said you can only do this once per turn. Because the way how that was written, you could have had 3 or 4 beasts right in front of Doomy, and as long as Doomy could have reached them, they all could have powered themselves out, maxed out Fury, and then he could have just went bop, 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 and removed all their Fury from them. So I think that might have made it a little bit too powerful of a Fury management, but if they would have limited it to like once per turn he could do it, then I think that would have been not a horrible balance.
I just like the idea he's supposed to be this in tune with the beasts and able to like calm them down. He even calmed down Molg. So I always thought that was kind of his niche.
Mm-hmm.
That was a reason to play Doomy 1 was,
Did he do that back in Mark 2 with his
No,
weapon?
this is completely new in Mark 3. So
Okay.
I did always like the imagery of thinking about him going, Mulg or the Mauler or something just starts running and getting angry and getting a tantrum, and Doomy walks up and thunks it on the head with that wood staff going, calm down.
that's exactly what happens. That was the imagery, but no longer.
No longer. It's rained on. So we do got one more thing that happened, or do we want to talk a little bit more about it?
Well, other than that, to him, it wasn't bad. They did do a little bit to Madrak too, which, the troll community knew it was coming. We had our Messiah, Madrak 2, coming from on top on high, killing everything, moving on, killing some more. And they did change the wording on his Grim Salvation to say that he could shunt off basic attacks. So spells and stuff still will affect him. But we have transfers and stuff. So, out of all of the nerfs that they could have done to Madrak 2, this one was the most preferred.
Okay.
Well, it also fixed some rules interactions.
Right. They even said, one of the possible fixes they had discussed was removing his ability to get a Fury for every model he kills.
Oh my God, that would have great.
That would have just destroyed him. He would have just been a bucket caster.
Or if they just would have capped how much Fury he could add onto it, because
oh no,
yeah, that would be nice. Fair and balanced, all right.
Yeah.
You can't be another Signar. Okay, there's only one Signar. God damn it.
Yeah. So those were the big troll changes that I could tell that really affected a lot. There was a few wordings. They changed how Trample works, and if you want to explain that, Kevin.
Yeah, so the big thing behind Trample is that with its prior wording, there was a lot of confusion around how tramples, if you trampled into something's back arc and then you rolled the damage for it, were you considered doing a back strike and getting back strike benefit to it. So basically what they ended up doing was that they kind of reworked Trample so that a way when an individual does a trample, it's the point of impact, if you will, of where the trample is actually how you determine the damage value for it. The other thing that I saw on it, I think I remember seeing something about when you were trying to determine free strikes during a trample, you have to actually determine all potential free strikes, even if it's a scenario of where you run into model displacement due to your trampling model ending at a certain point. So there's some issues there. I'd highly recommend coming over the rules for the free strikes on tramples. But other than that, it's just when you trample something, you're doing it from the angle or from the arc that you're trampling through. Just because you walk over an end in the back arc does not mean you're doing a back strike.
Hey, one thing I just saw was Sons of Brag. There was a change to fervor. It says
it was just a word change. They just changed it from fervor to say something else. It was simply just how they changed the wording, just the name of it. So, because it said they had fervor and now they have call of fervor, and it said that they could use their calls, and therefore it wasn't a call because it was just fervor. So it was just.
And I think they did that because they plan on giving the fervor prayer back to Creel warriors. Oh, too soon?
Oh.
Ooh.
Ooh. Do you want to talk about the other quote-unquote huge nerf to trolls with their March ability?
Ooh.
So, in other things that were on the errata,
So the
there was
felt
some.
caller here. Go ahead, Kevin. I can't even talk
It's
about it.
not just the fell caller, by the way. Rupert also got hit with the exact same thing.
Nobody
So
cares about Rupert. He was an unplayable figure.
I'm going to talk about Rupert, but please note that it applies to the fell caller as well. But basically, what ended up happening was when Rupert does his Pathfinder call in prior editions, it didn't have any sort of limitations or the limitation to it, and now it is basically called out for warrior models. So prior to this errata, Rupert could pass out Pathfinder to Warjacks.
And fell callers could pass it out to War Beasts.
To War Beasts.
So, and if you haven't noticed, Devin is very upset that now instead of only having to bring one model to give Pathfinder everyone, he has to bring two models to bring
just
to give
trying to
Pathfinder
rile
everybody.
him up.
I really am.
It's just one of those things that in Mark II, everybody said about the Fell Caller that he has this ability to affect different things, and Warcry, we were completely fine with Reveille lets people stand up. Okay, that's fine. And Warcry, hey, it only affects warrior models. And you're like, we were okay with that. And then we got March, and they took away the warrior model, specific text, and it opened up all new doors, and now it's gone, and I really enjoyed that. So I guess the Axer is back on the table much more often.
Yeah, I mean, you've got
Yeah.
Pathfinder and the Axer, and you've got the Fell Color for your warriors, so you're fine.
Yeah. It's kind of like what a lot of Warmachine factions have to deal with, where if we want to bring Pathfinder for our Jacks, we have to bring a caster that does it.
Right. Now we just have 15 points of Pathfinder to bring Pathfinder in our army.
That's fine. You got Warjack points or War Beast points.
Well, to be fair, the Axer isn't just going to be standing around waving his big giant axe going, go ahead, guys, you can walk through the rocks now.
Yeah, he
Sure
might do
is. That's
something.
That's his only point.
That's the only thing you get out of him.
All right.
So with Phil Collar and Rupert out, another actually really big change in a Hordes faction was the change to Makeda 3. She just got extremely disgusting. They changed her Hand of Death, and they replaced the first sentence of Hand of Death with the following. Target-friendly faction model gains overtake, and its weapons gain grievous wounds. The key point here being its weapons, not melee, not range, just weapons. So now this has opened up the doorway for the Mammoth's gun to now have grievous wounds on D3+1 shots.
Which, is perfectly fine because they just give out freaking grievous wounds to everybody. You give me trenchers with tough, and you give everybody goddamn grievous wounds.
Darius stock going down. Sell now.
Oh my god, yeah, that just makes me more depressed. I love Darius, but I just, god damn you, PP. You make me so sad in my pants. Just
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger.
Just.
I mean, grievous wounds is something that is becoming more and more affordable, in the factions that are available to it. I know a lot of people are hunting for it. There's just a simple change of it's not you can't heal to you can't remove damage, and the fact that in a world where in a meta where PP is trying to drive us towards Jacks, and there's just so much more exposure to the abilities to prevent Jacks from healing, it's I've had a lot of conversations with people where they're like, Kevin, you're putting a lot of Jacks in your list. Where are your repair guys? Like, why aren't you taking the mechanics or the tinkerers and stuff like that? Tinkerers I take when I need a 2-point filler. Mechanics, they're in like 1 or 2 of my list, but I'm just not focused on trying to fix it or trying to make sure I always have repairs, because either A, I'm only running, 2 jacks and I'm not worried about spending that point cost on it, or B, I know there's so much Grievous wounds out there that I'm going to have mechanics who are standing around going, man, I really wish I could do something about it, but that stupid, Bloodweaver chick ran over here and stabbed the jack with a knife, and for some reason my bolt won't, I can't put the bolt on the jack anymore.
Yeah, really quick, just going through who has Grievous wounds. For War Caches, you have Captain Kane, you have Drake McBain, Fiona, and Gareth. Warlocks.
Madrak 2.
Well, I would say Warlocks, you have Absalonia, Chromac 2, Morgul 2, it looks like, Madrak, and Saren. Warjacks, you have the Banshee, Blood of Martyrs, Desecrator, Galvanizer, and Stalker. War Beast, Desert Hydra, that's a really powerful model. Solos, you have Alton Ashley, Bloodweaver, Finn, Grotesque Assassin, Thorn Ravager, Whitemane. And for units, you have the Pharaoh Bone Grinders, Flamebringers, Strider Blightblades, and Thorn Bloodweavers. So
You forgot one, Tony.
I did?
Yeah, you forgot any friendly faction model in Scorn.
Oh, yeah, so any friendly faction model in Scorn, you're right. So, yeah, so I did a quick search in War Room to pull those up. And just doing a quick search, that's a lot of models in the game. That's a lot.
I think it's honestly a situation where when you're building lists, you need to make sure that there is at least one application of Grievous wounds somewhere in your list.
Yeah, it's just, jeez, and that's not even including, like, that's just for the normal Grievous wounds. Then you also have things for, so that's just to remove healing. If you also want to look at removing stealth, if you want to remove tough, then you also have fucking Deadly Shot you got to deal with.
Takedown.
So Deadly Shot's a whole nother thing, or Takedown. Like,
Sniper.
it's wholesale, just fuck you. Makes me sad, god damn it.
It makes me happy because just this morning, a person from my local meta, somebody that's in my group, Mr. Jake Young, decided to share a 19 Galvanizer Syntherian list with me.
Ugh. Yeah. How'd that go?
Well, I'm very happy that that Makeda 2 exists, and at least she can stop some of it.
Fucking Makeda 2. Wait, isn't Makeda 2 the bullshit thing?
Oh, sorry, Makeda 3. It was Makeda 3. It's the Exalted Core.
Makeda 3 is the fucking bullshit one that touched me goddamn inappropriately. Fuck Makeda 3. So continuing on the Hordes factions, the Wold Guardian lost Sturdy. Which is good. So losing Sturdy allows it now to work properly with Bradigus, because Bradigus' feet, originally you choose the table edge, you choose from like 0.5 to 5 inches, I think so, and that model is pushed in that direction. Well, with Sturdy, they couldn't move.
Meh. It's Mark III. Nobody plays Bradigus anymore.
Sure, you're right. He's just the absolute bads.
The worst.
So, just to give you guys a quick heads up, by the way, we're already at 28 minutes. So, we still have a couple more things we got to talk about.
3 more things. 4 more things.
10 more things.
So to continue right on, Tony, do you want to go into the change to disruption?
Yeah, so the change to disruption, I will pull it up specifically. So disruption is you replace the text of disruption with the following. A warjack hit by the attack loses its focus points and cannot channel spells or gain focus by any means, including by being allocated focus for 1 round. So pretty much what?
It just basically clears up the fact that people were trying to argue about gains and allocate and the different. There's like 3 or 4 different terms for how a jack can get focus, and this just turns around and says no. Period. End of story. Stop trying to argue the point. You can't get shit.
Yeah, which is nice because it makes it function exactly how it was in Mark II. Also, can't shake it, which you kind of couldn't shake it anyways because, again, you have to have focus to shake. But you also couldn't roll it off whenever you activated or during your control phase. So, because it just states, hey, for 1 round, you've got it, you're good to go.
Speaking of something that I was very upset that they did not change, and it's a little bit offside point, but I'll keep it very quick, is that speaking of things being able to shake, Aragorn not being able to shake stationary in any way. So that really kind of upset me that when I saw that they had changed a little bit about Aragorn, that wasn't part of it.
What's Aragorn?
The big beach ball.
For which the Coven?
Oh. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
fuck
so
that guy.
if you put stationary on him, he physically can't do anything. He's just stuck
awesome.
there. So
That's pretty great.
but that was a side topic. All right, so next, Empower. Kevin, you want to do that one?
Yeah, that was just actually a word fixing, but basically they ended up shifting it over to gains from allocate, so that way, because allocate is something that a warcaster can do, not a solo. So it's just a matter of when you empower, you remove disruption, and you give or the warjack that you were empowering gains a focus.
So, and just a quick side note before we continue on, there were a lot of other changes that we're not covering, including like Alexia, the changes to conversions with Lucan's feet and all that stuff that just created its round. We're kind of just hitting a lot of the bigger changes that we didn't see, or the ones that are a little more exciting to talk about, which I think brings us to kind of the big one, which is gang and flank.
That was one that a lot of people were having a lot of issues. There was some questioning of rules as intended and then rules as written. And so I'm very happy that Privateer Press got in there and made sure to clarify that 100% and get the right wording in there.
So I am happy with it as well, first off, but I ended up talking to some of my old local gamers about that.
Well, cover what the change was.
Okay,
Let them know what the change was.
So the change was how has it? I know
The big part about the change is the fact that now it's not a matter of it's not a matter of engaging the model as much as it is having a model in your melee range.
Yeah. So yeah, beforehand you had to be engaging the model. Now they just have to be in the melee range of another model.
And a lot of people be like, that's the same thing. And it's true, it is basically the same thing, but it's a clarification of words so that you don't have any ambiguity about, well, something's stationary or something's knocked down and it can't be engaged. Now it can be stationary or knocked down, it doesn't matter. It's still in my melee range, so I can swing on it or I can get my gang or flying.
Right.
Yeah.
The exact wording is, when making a melee attack, targeting an enemy model in the melee range of another model in this unit, this model gains +2 to melee attack and melee damage rolls. Now, the only question I have about that, are they going to run into issues with the wording of in this unit? Because doesn't gang work with other units that also have gang?
I don't think so, because it's usually always been with self-contained.
Yeah, it's usually it's a rule that's part of a unit that may have a gang trigger that's outside of the unit. So like Sword Knights trigger off of gang I'm sorry, that's flank. That's not gang.
Who's the one with Steelheads that gets to do gang with them, or used to? I don't know. I don't really play anything that has gang. We have scouts, but who plays them? So. That's
just a rules cleanup in a lot of ways, which a lot of people seem to be are happy with, but others not so much.
Yeah, a lot of people are happy with it. I got into a little bit of a argument with some of my local my old group, about this rule. And it wasn't necessarily the rule itself. It was they were really pissed off that Privateer Press was arguing with people saying, no, this we're going to send, this we're going to send, and then this errata dropped, and it completely changed it back to what everyone else thought it was. So they felt that Privateer Press were liars, and they felt that they couldn't trust Privateer Press because they were so against that, and also they were against Karys Sloan's feet beforehand, saying that Karys Sloan's feet's not broken. Well, then you go and change it. So what are your guys' thoughts on it? I mean, how do you feel with that?
I couldn't disagree with them more. I have a huge frustration. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tirade here. People, wake the hell up and set your expectations properly. You have a company who I've got a bunch of people are like, well, they had 3 years. Okay, that's not 3 years of play testing. That's 3 years of design and play testing. And if you've ever done any sort of program work of any kind, It is literally impossible for a group who is basically covered under NDA to find out every possible outcome and every possible conclusion when they become their own echo chamber. We see it all the time on the forums where somebody makes a comment and everybody starts repeating it. The same thing happens when you're doing a project. Somebody makes an idea, comes up with an idea or a thought or a suggestion, and the rest of the group just kind of echoes it, and it develops into what they thought it should be, and then they don't think outside the box. That's why a lot of companies will come along and bring in external resources to do reviews or to do QA to make sure that things aren't echoed, or that there's an outside source to review it. You cannot possibly expect a small company like Privateer Press, and don't be deluded, Privateer Press is not a big company, it's a small company. You cannot expect a small company like Privateer Press to work out every single interaction for every single model, for every single caster, with every single unit and beast and jack and solo, and expect them to get it all right. They're going to make mistakes. If you've ever gone and played a video game, and it's a live video game that does patches and stuff like that, those patches happen for a reason, because even in their development, they're not going to catch every little interaction. You will have glitches. That's what we're experiencing right now in Mark III. We are experiencing Mark III glitches, and we have to give PP time to address them and properly test them to deploy erratas like this, which are simple word fixes to clean up the code, if you will, the rules. Turning around and being like, well, they had 3 years. Yeah, they had 3 years to develop it. They had 3 years to develop and test it. And I'd argue, I've heard rumors from various different sources that this was actually an escalated time schedule. They weren't actually going to release it now, but they did. For whatever reasons, they did. And that causes their testing timetable to go down. Just set your expectations properly. They're not going to have a perfect rule set out the gate. I don't even think, and Tony, maybe you can cover this. In Mark 1, when Mark 2 came out, even with the open beta testing, did they have a perfect rule set even after the beta testing?
It was, what I will say, it was a lot better than with this Mark III rollout.
But was it perfect? Did it have errors in it?
Of course it had errors in it. Did no one remember Gatsby? Gatsby itself was a fucking error for 6 years that they...
So how can Mark III be any different? Why are people looking at Mark III going, I expect perfection? That's, it's completely unrealistic. And I'm begging you, for anybody who's listening to this, stop bitching about the rules, stop complaining that they had 3 years, give Privateer Press time to figure it out, and then we can move forward. I promise this game is good. It will be better. It will be... Privateer Press will fix the issues. We have to give them time.
And I agree. It will be good. It will be better. My counter argument to it, and I also obviously I want to hear what our listeners are saying as well. But I still really think if they would have done even if they didn't get a massive playtest, like they did with the open beta test, because I know that it was kind of a shit show. If they would have put out those rules to a couple other people to kind of see those errors, some of the stuff could have been fixed. There's a lot of simple things, and that's why this errata looks so big. It's 13 pages long, because there was 15 models with gang or flank that they had to fix. They had to fix through, all the books with how it charges and stuff like that. So it's just, I think this stuff could have been fixed. Simple stuff like that if there was a playtest, open beta. But what can you do? It's already out.
I know that I was passing the torch, but also anybody who doesn't like the rule set for Mark III, I encourage you to go play any GW product.
That's just not nice. We don't want to wish that fate on somebody.
I like GW. I like GW games. I enjoy them for what they are, but I have appropriate level expectation of their rule set.
I'm going to play devil's advocate on both sides. First and foremost, I'm going to say that I believe that I can see partially where Tony's cohort is coming from, in the fact that when the gang and the flank debacle came out and they stood by their rule, it's really hard for us to say whether A, they just weren't willing to accept a mistake they made, They were actually being very silent in general, and other than the amazing Infernals who work very hard to try and keep rules as clear as possible, Privateer Press was being very silent. So, I mean, once again, on one hand, you could say, are they just not owning up to what they did, or did they actually take what we, the players, had said in consideration and change the rule because of what we brought up? You know, so I mean, there's that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, when it comes to what Kevin was saying about the timeline and everything, is, you know, they took 3 years to design this, and you know, nothing's going to be perfect. Not when you have as many diverse models as we have, with as many diverse rules as we have, with so many interactions. There's just no way to test that. But I do feel that they have made strides in making sure that they let us know that you know, they could do a rule change at any point. You know, 6-month erratas before used to be like a big deal because you would wait 6 months for a rule change, and now they're saying, hey, if we feel like this needs to change, we'll errata it that day. You know, and I think that it's them striving to create and keep to that better rule set. Now, I do believe that the release of Mark III could have been better. I do believe they should have allocated a little bit more time for themselves. But all in all, I think that they're really approaching this in the right way and doing the best that they can. And people are going to complain. And if we had done an open beta, or if they had involved more play testers, you would have had just another leak of the rules and then people taking it into their own hand or yelling at them for rules that aren't even out yet because, you know, they're still being tested. So, I mean, they're really damned if they do, damned if they don't.
They really are. So, I know we want to talk about some other things, but we are at 42 minutes right now. So I know. So editing will happen. There'll be a little bit, but I think, guys, this is good enough to wrap it up.
So, I mean, with everything else that Privateer Press is doing, I mean, they tried to fix a lot of things. And, I mean, I know that we only got to approach some of the topics that we would have liked and the ones that we handpicked, but I really want to see what some of the people that are listening to this podcast have to say. What errata changes affected you, and how do you feel that it played out? You know, let us know what you feel were maybe big changes that we missed. You know, how did it affect you, and what are your thoughts on the way that you know, the new changes are being dealt with?
All right. Yep. So let us know on Facebook. Let us know on YouTube. That is a wrap for us. So thank you guys very much for listening to another episode of Turn Extension.
Bye, guys.